Everyone. Russia had long believed that the Baltic Sea was its quiet strategic backyard, a controlled corridor where NATO movements could be monitored, contained, and ultimately deterred. However, something enormous has now appeared beneath those cold northern waters, something that has quietly transformed the Baltic from a passive frontier into an active pressure point that Moscow can no longer ignore. This is not a fleet, not a submarine, and not a conventional military buildup. It is far more unsettling, because it does not behave like traditional power projection. It does not move with speed, yet it changes everything. And the most dangerous part is that Russia saw it coming, but underestimated what it would become. The images you're about to see on your screens reveal a silent transformation already underway. Satellite footage, maritime tracking overlays, and underwater mapping data show a vast and structured presence stretching across key Baltic corridors. What appears at first glance to be infrastructure is, in reality, a layered system of control, surveillance, and denial. It is not designed to attack. It is designed to suffocate movement itself. The footage shows anchored platforms, subsea cables, autonomous sensor grids, and restricted navigation zones forming a pattern that looks less like defense and more like a net tightening across the sea. On January 14, 2026, reports began surfacing from maritime intelligence units in Finland and Estonia regarding unusual activity near the Gulf of Finland. By January 22, NATO reconnaissance confirmed the installation of new underwater monitoring systems spanning nearly 180 kilometers between key choke points. By early February, commercial shipping routes had subtly shifted, avoiding areas now marked by unexplained interference signals. The Baltic Sea, bordered by 9 nations including Sweden, Finland, Poland, and Russia, has always been a strategic artery. But with Finland and Sweden officially integrated into NATO structures by 2025, the balance of control shifted dramatically. What was once a contested space had begun turning into what analysts at CSIS described as a NATO-dominant maritime environment. But that phrase hides a deeper reality, because what NATO has effectively built is not just dominance, but denial. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the newly deployed systems include fiber-linked seabed sensors capable of detecting submarine movement at distances exceeding 120 kilometers. These are supported by unmanned surface vessels operating in coordinated patrol patterns, relaying data in real time to command centers in Stockholm and Helsinki. The network integrates with airborne early warning systems and coastal missile batteries, forming a multi-layered anti-access and area denial architecture, commonly referred to as A2AD. And this is where things get really strange. Because unlike traditional A2AD systems, which rely on visible deterrents like missile launchers and radar arrays, this network operates largely out of sight. It is embedded beneath the sea, hidden within civilian infrastructure, and masked by commercial maritime traffic. The cables that carry data also resemble energy interconnectors. The sensor nodes resemble maintenance platforms. It is a system designed to blend into the environment while controlling it completely. The technical implications are staggering. A submarine attempting to enter this zone would be tracked almost immediately through acoustic signatures captured by distributed hydrophone arrays. Surface vessels would face constant monitoring, with deviations flagged in seconds. Electronic warfare components embedded in the system can disrupt navigation signals, creating confusion without firing a single shot. According to leaked defense assessments cited by European intelligence briefings, the system can effectively create a digital minefield, where movement becomes unpredictable and increasingly risky. But the truly shocking detail is not the technology itself. It is what this technology enables. Because control of the Baltic Sea is not just about naval movement, it is about supply lines, energy flows, and strategic depth. Russia's Kaliningrad exclave, heavily militarized and isolated from mainland Russia, depends on secure maritime routes for reinforcement and resupply. If those routes become compromised, Kaliningrad transforms from a forward base into a vulnerable pocket. This tactical reality leads directly into strategic consequences. If NATO can monitor and restrict movement in the Baltic, it gains the ability to isolate Russian forces without direct confrontation. This is escalation without escalation. It is pressure without open conflict. And it creates a scenario where Russia must respond. But any response risks triggering a larger confrontation. To understand the scale of this shift, one must look at historical historical parallels. During the Cold War, control of maritime choke points defined the balance of power between NATO and the Soviet Union. The Geoc Gap, stretching between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, was one such zone. Today, the Baltic Sea is becoming a modern equivalent. But unlike the Cold War, where detection systems were limited and slow, today's network operates with near-instantaneous data processing, integrating artificial intelligence to predict movement patterns and identify anomalies. Economically, the implications are equally significant. The Baltic Sea handles approximately 15% of global maritime trade in Northern Europe, including energy shipments, industrial goods, and raw materials. Any disruption, even perceived, can alter shipping costs, insurance premiums, and regional supply chains. According to European Commission data, rerouting even 10% of Baltic traffic could increase transportation costs by billions annually. This brings us to the geopolitical dimension. With Finland and Sweden inside NATO, the alliance now controls nearly the entire Baltic coastline, with Russia reduced to limited access points. Analysts at NATO's Strategic Command have described this as a geographic inversion, where Russia's former advantage has turned into strategic confinement. Moscow, which once projected power outward, now faces containment within its own maritime borders. But how does this affect decision-making in the Kremlin? Because strategy is not just about capabilities, it is about perception. Russian leadership has historically relied on the assumption that rapid escalation could deter NATO actions. However, this new system challenges that assumption. It does not present a clear target. It cannot be easily destroyed without widespread consequences. And it operates continuously, creating constant pressure rather than sudden shocks. This is where the psychological dimension becomes critical. Imagine a commander responsible for naval operations in Kaliningrad. Every movement is tracked. Every route is monitored. Every decision carries uncertainty. The sea, once a space of maneuver, becomes a constrained environment. This is not just a military challenge, it is a psychological one. Reports from defense ministries indicate increased Russian naval exercises in the Baltic since February 2026, with a 40% rise in patrol frequency. Yet these exercises remain largely confined, avoiding areas where the new network is most active. This suggests not confidence, but caution. And caution, in strategic terms, often signals vulnerability. For civilians, the impact is less visible, but equally real. Shipping companies adjust routes. Insurance firms revise risk models. Energy operators reassess infrastructure security. The Baltic becomes a zone of quiet tension, where normal activity continues under an invisible layer of control. So, what happens next? The future projection is both complex and uncertain. In the short term, Russia may attempt to test the system through limited incursions or electronic probing. In the medium term, it could invest in countermeasures, including stealth technologies and cyber operations targeting the network itself. In the long term, this could trigger a broader shift toward underwater domain competition, where control of seabed infrastructure becomes as important as control of airspace. But there is a deeper question that remains unanswered. Will this system stabilize the region by deterring conflict, or will it increase tension by creating constant pressure? Because history shows that environments of persistent tension often lead to miscalculation. And in a space as strategically sensitive as the Baltic, miscalculation carries global consequences. The Baltic Sea was once considered a secondary theater in global geopolitics. Today, it is becoming a central stage where new forms of power are being tested. Not through explosions or invasions, but through control, surveillance, and silent dominance. And Russia is watching, not because it wants to, but because it has no choice. The massive presence that has appeared beneath the Baltic Sea is not just infrastructure. It is a signal that warfare is changing, a signal that control no longer requires visibility, and a signal that the balance of power can shift without a single shot being fired. What are your thoughts on this silent transformation unfolding beneath the Baltic Sea? Do you think this new system will prevent conflict or make it inevitable? Share your perspective in the comments below. The Baltic was once Russia's strategic comfort zone, but now it may be turning into its greatest constraint, presented by TGN. Thank you for choosing us. Thanks for watching us.